Women don't test men the way dating coaches describe it. They don't sit around plotting scenarios. Testing happens instinctively, emotionally, and constantly. It shows up in small moments most men overlook, and those moments determine everything. In this video, I'm breaking down 8 psychological tests women use to decide whether a man feels grounded, reliable, and worth building with. These tests reveal how you handle pressure, uncertainty, distance, and emotional weight. I'm not here to teach you tricks. I'm here to show you what women are actually looking for when they test and why failing doesn't look dramatic. It looks like quiet disengagement. Watch carefully because once you understand this, your reactions change. Once you understand that testing isn't a game, but a constant evaluation, everything starts to come into focus. These tests don't arrive with warnings, and they don't wait until you're ready. They show up early, quietly, and often when you think nothing important is happening. That's why missing them feels confusing and costly. Before we go any further, make sure you like this video and subscribe because clarity only helps if you stay long enough to apply it. Now let's start where every evaluation begins. Confidence. Number 1, the confidence test. This is the first test, and it happens faster than most men realize. Sometimes within minutes, sometimes in the first few exchanges, and almost always in a way that looks harmless on the surface. A subtle comment, a questioning tone, a light challenge to a decision you just made. She's not trying to start a fight. She's not trying to disrespect you. She's watching one thing very closely. Do you collapse when your frame gets nudged? Women don't test confidence to provoke drama. They test it to measure stability, to see whether the man in front of them is grounded or just pretending. Here's the part most men misunderstand. Real confidence doesn't react. Ego does. The man who feels the need to explain himself, justify his choice, or correct her perception is already off balance. He thinks he's defending his position, but what he's actually revealing is that her approval matters more than his own certainty. Let me make this clear. Confidence is quiet. Insecurity is loud. Picture this. You choose a place. She tilts her head and says, "Really? That's where you want to go?" Nothing aggressive. Just enough doubt to shake you if your footing isn't solid. The insecure man backtracks. He explains. He negotiates with her tone. He starts reshaping his decision so it lands better. The confident man doesn't harden. He doesn't argue. He doesn't sell. He pauses. He stays relaxed. And he stands where he already stood, not because he's stubborn, because he doesn't need her validation to hold his ground. That's the cheat code. You don't defend, you don't over-clarify, you don't adjust. It's your center, just to smooth the moment. You let the silence do the work, and here's what happens when you do that. She relaxes because now she knows something important. You're not easily rattled. You're not governed by emotional pressure. You're someone who can be challenged without breaking. That's what women are actually searching for in this test. Not dominance, not aggression, stability. The man who stays calm controls the room. Number 2, the jealousy test. This one is never as obvious as men expect. It doesn't come with accusations or dramatic scenes. It shows up quietly, casually, almost playfully. She mentions another man, an ex, a coworker, someone who hit on her, or she flirts with the attention around her just enough for you to notice. And suddenly the spotlight isn't on him, it's on you. Here's the truth most men don't want to hear. This test has nothing to do with that other man. It's about where you place yourself in your own hierarchy. Women use jealousy to measure self-worth. Not confidence you talk about, but confidence you live inside. She's watching to see if your sense of value is internally anchored or if it collapses the moment competition enters the room. The insecure man reacts immediately. He asks questions that aren't really questions. He probes, he compares, he tries to control the situation so he can feel safe again. And every one of those reactions communicates the same thing. I'm afraid of losing you because I don't fully believe in my own value. That fear is the turnoff. The man who passes this test doesn't perform indifference. He doesn't fake detachment. He doesn't puff his chest. He stays calm because he already knows where he stands. He doesn't interrogate. He doesn't compete. He doesn't need to remind her why he matters. His silence isn't weakness, it's certainty. Picture the difference. One man tightens when another name enters the conversation. His energy shifts, his tone sharpens. The room feels smaller. The other man stays exactly the same. Same posture, same pace, same presence. Nothing changes because nothing needs to change. That's the cheat code. When you don't guard your value, it signals that it's not fragile. When you don't react, it shows that you don't see other men as threats, only as background noise. And that's when the test ends, because the man who knows his value never needs to guard it. Number 3, the I'm fine test. When a woman says, I'm fine, most men hear information. Women are sending a signal. This test isn't about honesty, it's about perception, about whether you can read emotional context without being dragged into emotional chaos. Here's the mistake that splits men into two losing categories. The first man takes the words literally. He nods, he moves on. He tells himself, she said she was fine, so everything must be fine. What he's really saying is, I'm disconnected, and I don't notice shifts unless they're spelled out. The second man panics. He presses. He apologizes prematurely. He tries to fix something that hasn't even been named yet. His mood drops. His energy collapses into hers. Suddenly, she's not just upset, she's in control. Both men fail for the same reason. They let her emotional state dictate their internal state. Women use this test to see if you can recognize emotion without being ruled by it, awareness without absorption, presence without surrender. I'm fine rarely means everything is perfect, but it also doesn't mean you're required to chase clarity or rescue the moment. The cheat code is simple but uncomfortable for men who crave certainty. You acknowledge without chasing. You stay calm. You stay grounded. You let her feel seen without handing her the steering wheel to your mood. A simple response changes everything. Not an interrogation, not a solution, not emotional pleading, just recognition paired with steadiness. You signal, I see there's more here, but I'm not destabilized by it. And that's the moment the dynamic shifts, because now she's dealing with a man who can hold emotional tension without cracking. A man who doesn't need emotional resolution immediately to feel okay. That's strength, not coldness, not detachment, control. Women don't want men who ignore emotion, and they don't want men who drown in it either. They want the man who can stand steady while emotions pass through the room. Emotional strength is staying steady around unstable emotions. Number 4, the independence test. This test confuses more men than almost any other because it sounds like a warning when it's actually an invitation. She talks about how independent she is, how busy her life is, how she doesn't need a man, how she can handle everything on her own. Most men hear that and do one of two things. They retreat or they get defensive. Both reactions miss the point. When a woman emphasizes her independence, she's not pushing you away. She's watching to see if your sense of leadership collapses the moment she doesn't need you. This is not a test of dominance. It's a test of security. Women want to know if you can lead without feeling threatened by their strength, if you can make decisions without asking for permission, if you can hold direction even when she doesn't surrender control easily. The insecure man backs off. He lets her plan everything. He avoids taking initiative because he's afraid of overstepping. He tells himself he's being respectful, but what he's really doing is abandoning the lead. The ego-driven man reacts the opposite way. He competes. He tries to prove he's more capable. He pushes too hard, too fast, trying to reclaim authority that was never actually taken from him. Both fail. The man who passes this test doesn't argue about independence. He doesn't challenge it. He doesn't shrink next to it either. He leads calmly. He decides without announcing it as power. He sets plans without needing approval. He moves the interaction forward naturally without framing it as a contest. That's the cheat code. Leadership doesn't require permission, and it doesn't need to be loud. Picture the difference. One man hesitates every time she mentions how self-sufficient she is. His energy softens, his direction disappears. The other man listens, nods, and continues moving forward, unchanged. His decisions don't waver. His presence doesn't tighten, and something subtle happens. She relaxes because she's learned something important. Her strength doesn't intimidate you, and your leadership doesn't threaten her autonomy. Strong women relax around stronger frames. Number 5, the boundaries test. This is the test where most men quietly lose the game and don't even realize it happened because this one isn't subtle. Plans get canceled last minute. Requests start to feel one-sided. Respect slips in ways that are easy to excuse but hard to ignore. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Women don't always push boundaries consciously, but they always notice what happens when they do. This test exists to answer one question. Will this man protect his self-respect, or will he trade it for connection? The man who fails usually fails in one of two extremes. The first type stays silent. He swallows the disrespect. He tells himself he's being patient, understanding, mature. In reality, he's teaching her that his needs are optional. The second type explodes. He lets resentment build, then releases it all at once. His reaction feels emotional, uncontrolled, and late. And instead of commanding respect, it creates distance. Both responses communicate weakness. Boundaries aren't about anger, and they're not about endurance either. They're about clarity. The man who passes this test doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't lecture. He simply reinforces his line calmly and firmly right when it's crossed. That's the cheat code. You don't explain yourself into exhaustion. You don't negotiate your standards. You don't punish. You state what you accept and what you don't. And then you stand there comfortably. Picture this. She cancels again without consideration. Instead of pretending it's fine or unloading frustration, you respond evenly. No edge, no apology, no emotional charge, just truth delivered once, and then you move on. That moment tells her everything she needs to know. That you respect yourself, that you won't chase at the cost of dignity, that access to you requires consideration. And here's what men need to understand. Women don't feel safe with men who have no boundaries, because if you won't protect yourself, you won't protect the relationship either. What you tolerate becomes her reality. Number 6, the attention and distance test. This test shows up the moment her energy changes. She replies slower. She pulls back. She becomes less available without explanation. And suddenly, many men panic. They double text. They check in. They try to reignite attention that hasn't actually disappeared. It's just paused. What they're really revealing is fear. Fear of losing access. Fear of being forgotten. Women use distance to measure scarcity, not because they enjoy manipulating, but because distance exposes value. She's watching to see if your presence is a choice or a need. The man who fails this test mistakes attention for security. He chases clarity. He demands reassurance. He overextends to pull her back toward him. And the more he reaches, the less attractive he becomes, because attention given freely feels valuable. Attention begged for feels cheap. The man who passes this test doesn't disappear, and he doesn't pursue either. He mirrors. If she pulls back, he doesn't tighten his grip. He keeps his rhythm. He stays engaged with his life. His tone remains unchanged. His world doesn't shrink just because her attention briefly did. That's the cheat code. Mirroring energy isn't a tactic. It's a reflection of self-respect. You're not punishing her. You're not playing games. You're simply refusing to overinvest where energy isn't being matched. Picture the contrast. One man stares at his phone waiting. His mood shifts with every delayed reply. His day bends around her availability. The other man continues moving. Same pace, same priorities. When she returns, she meets him exactly where he is, steady, present, unaffected. And that's when the dynamic flips, because now she feels the gap. Not because you withdrew affection, but because you never depended on it. Women are drawn to men whose attention feels earned, not guaranteed. Men who choose to give time, not men who leak it. Attention flows to those who don't beg for it. Number 7, the support test. This is the test where good intentions quietly sabotage attraction. She comes to you with a problem, she vents, she talks in circles, and somewhere in the middle of it, she says something that confuses most men. I don't need a solution. I just need you to listen. Men hear that and think it's irrational or inefficient or unnecessary. Women hear it as a filter. This test isn't about fixing anything. It's about whether you understand when to lead and when not to. Most men fail because they move too fast. They interrupt with advice. They offer solutions before she feels understood. They try to handle the situation instead of holding space for it. What they're really communicating is this: your emotions make me uncomfortable, and I need them to stop. That's not support, that's avoidance, disguised as competence. Women use this test to measure emotional intelligence, to see if you can sit with emotion without trying to control it, to feel without becoming reactive. The man who passes this test doesn't rush. He listens fully. He acknowledges what she's feeling. He lets her land before trying to move the conversation forward. That's the cheat code. Validation first, leadership later. And no, validation doesn't mean agreement. It doesn't mean weakness. It means recognition. Picture the shift. One man jumps in with fixes. She shuts down. The conversation ends unresolved. Even if the solution made sense, the other man stays present. He reflects back what he hears. He lets her finish without steering. Only after the emotional pressure releases does he offer perspective, if it's even needed, and something important happens. She feels safe, not babied, not managed, seen. That safety creates trust, and trust opens the door to influence, because women are far more receptive to guidance from men who first prove they can understand without overpowering. This is where many men get it wrong. Leadership isn't always about direction. Sometimes it's about restraint. Being heard creates safety. Safety creates attraction. Number 8, the long-term potential test. This is the test that never announces itself and never goes away. Women are always scanning forward. Even in the early stages, even when things feel casual, even when she says she's just seeing how it goes, she's watching for one thing above all else. Where is this man headed, and can he handle the road? This test operates on 2 levels. The first is direction. She asks about your goals, your vision, where you see yourself in 5 or 10 years. Not because she expects a perfect plan, but because she needs to know you're moving with intention. A man without direction feels unstable, not financially, emotionally. Men who live moment to moment, drifting without purpose, fail this test quickly. Vagueness reads as stagnation. Complacency reads as risk. The second level is resilience. She pays attention to how you handle setbacks, pressure, frustration, loss. Does adversity make you bitter or focused? Do you collapse or adapt? This is where many men misunderstand attraction. Long-term desire isn't built on comfort. It's built on trajectory. Women aren't looking for finished men. They're looking for men who are going somewhere and proving it through discipline, consistency, and self-respect. The insight most men miss is this: she's not evaluating your current status. She's evaluating your direction of travel. The man who fails this test complains about circumstances. He externalizes blame. He waits for motivation instead of building structure. The man who passes doesn't oversell the future. He lives it quietly. That's the cheat code. You don't need everything figured out. You need momentum. You need habits. You need evidence. Small daily proof that you're investing in something larger than comfort. Career growth, personal discipline, physical standards, mental clarity. These signals matter far more than promises, because women don't commit to potential. Potential is cheap. They commit to trajectory. When she sees that you're moving forward, especially when it's difficult, something clicks. Now, you're not just attractive, you're viable. A woman doesn't commit to potential. She commits to trajectory. If there's one thing you need to understand after everything you've just heard, it's this: the tests never stop. They don't end once she's interested. They don't disappear once you're committed. And they're not designed to punish you. They're designed to filter. That's where most men get it wrong. They think these moments are manipulation, games, emotional traps. But in reality, they're checkpoints, quiet questions she's asking herself about the man standing in front of her. Can he stay grounded? Can he lead without force? Can he hold his value without demanding validation? Passing these tests was never about saying the right thing or performing the right move. It was about who you are when pressure shows up. Because here's the truth. No one says out loud, the moment you start obsessing over how to pass her tests, you've already lost frame. Strong men don't focus on being evaluated. They focus on being stable, on living with direction, on protecting their standards, whether someone is watching or not. And when that happens, something shifts. The tests soften. The tension disappears. The need to prove fades away. Not because she stopped testing, but because you stopped being testable. If you constantly feel like you're being measured, challenged, or pushed, it's not because women are difficult, it's because your frame isn't solid yet. And that's not an insult, it's an invitation. Build a life with direction. Set standards you're willing to enforce. Learn to stay calm when emotions rise around you. When you stand steady, the noise fades. If this message hit where it needed to, make that commitment now. Subscribe, not for entertainment, but for clarity. Like and share this with a man who needs to wake up. And in the comments, tell me which test you failed before and what you see differently now. Because awareness is where control begins.